Hello, good day. My name is Hassan Zarinmer, lead auditor and medical device assessor of the NVGL. I'm based in Malaysia. First of all, thank you for your participation in our webinar. Today, our title for webinar is Uncovering European Medical Device Regulation MDR, focus on annexes. Actually, I hope this webinar help you to better understanding the requirements of new European regulations based on MDR and to have a better and general view about regulations. In this webinar, our focus is more about annexes, and we talk about a new medical device regulation, overview on annexes, and certification process based on MDR. As you know, on 5th of April 2017, the European Parliament voted to adopt the long-awaited medical device regulation and Directive 9342 EEC on medical devices and Directive 9385 EEC on active implantable medical devices has been replaced by MDR. Also, Directive 9879 EEC on in vitro diagnostic medical devices has been replaced by in vitro diagnostic regulation for IVDR. So after May of 2020, all certificates shall be issued based on new medical device regulation and in vitro diagnostic regulation by IVDR. A new regulatory framework in the field of medical devices is expected to ensure that more protection of patient safety and public health, legal certainty and innovation-friendly environment, more transparency and more European approach. In compare with previous Medical Device Directive, MDD 9342, at the moment, MDR has 123 articles and including 17 annexes. And in the previous time, it was including 23 articles and just 12 annexes. So there are so many requirements, new requirements, and some regulations about medical device for those medical devices want to put on the market. I would like to explain you these 17 annexes one by one and have a better and get some overview about these annexes. Annex 1 in this MDR is about general safety and performance requirements. It's including some items, say perform as intended, start of the art, risk reduction, risk management, and risk control. Actually, these annexes has some requirements about providing risk management file, including some safety and performance, and also some risk-benefit issues. Item 3 is about lifetime of product. It's including shelf life, expiry date, something like this. Some requirements and safety performance about packaging. Evaluated benefit of achieved performance must be more than known and foreseeable risk and undesirable side effects. Also, devices with no medical purpose has been added to Annex 16 in this MDR, and it shall not present any risk or only the maximum acceptable provided by this item. Machinery directive also must be considered. Chemical, physical, and biological properties, infection and microbial contamination, devices incorporating medicinal products, including drugs, some medicinal products, and devices composed of substances that are absorbed by or locally dispersed in the human body. Devices incorporating materials of biological origin, construction and environmental properties, devices with the diagnostic or measuring function, protection against radiation. All these items as mentioned in general safety and performance requirements. Next items, electronic programmable systems, active devices and devices control connected to them, protection against mechanical and thermal risks, protection against the risk posed to the patient or user by supply energy or substances, protection against the risks posed by medical devices intended by the manufacturer for use by laypersons, information supplied by the manufacturer, plus some new items that is mandatory in this regulation. Implant card for implantable medical devices based on Article 16, promotional material CE mark, and UDI requirements. UDI means unique device identification, which is mandatory for this medical device regulation. Annex 2 is about technical documentation, and for technical file and technical design dossier system, you have to provide some details about products, including some documents to demonstrate your safety and performance of your product, in addition to essential requirement. Actually, in essential requirements, you have to refer to this technical documentation to demonstrate the safety and performance of the medical device. This technical documentation must be included device description and a specification including variants and accessories, information to be supplied by the manufacturer, design and manufacturing information, general safety and performance requirements, benefit risk analysis and risk management, product verification and validation, preclinical and clinical data, and additional information required in specific cases can cover verification and validation of the product. So manufacturer must provide a technical file including these items. Annex 3 of MDR is about technical documentation on post-market surveillance, PMS. The MDR is more specific about the need for clinical evidence and clinical evaluation proportionate with the risk associated with the given device. Under the new regulation, MDR, device manufacturers will be required to collect post-market clinical data as part of the ongoing assessment of potential safety risk. Post-market clinical follow-up, PMCF, is a continuous process with the objective of constantly updating the clinical evaluation. So PMCF can be considered as part of clinical evaluation. Additionally, reporting timeframes are tightened from 30 days to 15 days for reporting serious incidents. There will be new electronic vigilance reporting and periodic safety update report for all devices subjected to differing frequency and submission requirements. PMS is suitable to analyze data on quality, performance, and safety. Also, update risk-benefit determination, clinical evaluation, summary of safety, and clinical performance. Post-market surveillance plan is required. Periodic safety update report defined, including volume of sales, population of users, and frequency of use. For Class 3 and implantable, updated annually and submitted to notification body is mandatory. So for Class 3 must be annually. Vigilance in line with the new MedDev. An annual surveillance plan for authorized authorities, including announced and unannounced facility visits. Actually, manufacturers need to review their procedures for post-marketing surveillance and ensure that the responsibility for the provision of these additional data and associated support is clearly established. This is likely to require additional resources in functions that support products on the market, such as regulatory and medical affairs. It should be noted that the processes for post-marketing surveillance and post-market clinical follow-up should be implemented as soon as possible, as the data generated will be very useful for documenting compliance to the new requirements when you apply for MDR. So manufacturers that have planned to apply for MDR need to collect and gather some information about their products on the market. So these kind of information must be gathered as soon as possible to complete their documents about post-marketing surveillance. Annex 4 in MDR is about declaration of conformity. The same as before, manufacturer must provide declaration of conformity, including name, registered trade name or registered trademark. If applicable, its authorized representative and the address of their registered place of business where they can be conducted and their location be established. A statement that the EU Declaration of Conformity is issued under the sole responsibility of the manufacturer. Also, the basic UDI system must be considered in Declaration of Conformity. Product and trade name, product code, catalog number, or other ambitious reference allowing identification and traceability of the device covered by the EU Declaration of Conformity, such as photograph, but appropriate, as well as its intended purpose, intended use, except for the products or trade name. The information allowing identification and traceability may be provided by the basic UDI. Also, risk classes of the risk class of the device, a statement that the device is covered by present declaration, is in conformity with the regulation, where applicable, the name and identification number of notified body, and some other information based on Annex 4, which is mandatory for declaration of conformity. Annex 5 is about CE marking of conformity and how to use this CE symbol on your products. Actually, these items must be minimum 5 millimeter, but it must be used for medical devices as planned for put on the European market. Annex 6 is about those requirements, those identification by manufacturer. Actually, it's about the UDI system, unique device identification, and the MDR requires the traceability of all devices placed on the EU market, except custom-made devices, by means of a unique device identification system, UDI system, based on international guidance to significantly improve the effectiveness of post-market safety-related activities for devices. It must be considered. Each device will need to have an assigned UDI obtained from a UDI supplier, and this information must be uploaded into EUDA MED, which means European Data Bank on Medical Device. The UDI must be established before the product is placed on the market, and the UDI carrier must be provided on the device label packaging, and in the case of reusable devices, on the device itself. Submitted upon the registration of device and economic operators, core data elements to be provided to the UDI database together with the UDI DI and the UDI system PMS suitable to analyze this data on quality, performance, and safety must be considered by manufacturer. This annex is all about these items. We have another specific webinar about UDI system and what solution the manufacturer can have. We will inform you about our next webinar about UDI. It should be noted that for logistical reasons relating to European data bank on medical device and the delegated act on UDI, the UDI requirements cannot be immediately implemented and will be phased in beginning in 2021, starting with the highest risk devices. It means for class 3 is priority, and for class 3 and implementable devices is the first medical devices in plan for UDI system. Other classes will be after class 3. Also, detailed project planning for UDI implementation in the EU, additional to that currently required by the FDA in the US, will be required. While the detailed specification of the UDI system is still under decision, current information suggests it will not differ significantly from the newly established US system. So manufacturers who don't supply their products to the US will have the steepest learning curve on EU UDI. So however, they can also learn from the success and mistakes of UDI implementation. Annex 7 for MDR is about requirements to be met by notified bodies. Actually, all notified bodies that have planned to remind the list of C certification must apply for MDR with determining relevant scopes, including some groups of medical devices, some classes, and also some subclasses. So it's more about and is relevant to notification bodies, not relevant to manufacturer of medical devices. Annex 8 is about classification rules. As you know, some classification rules has been changed in compare with MDD 9342, and certain products have received special consideration in MDR and are subjected to reclassification. These new provisions are usually applied to cosmetic implants, standalone software products without an intended medical purpose based on Annex 16, and certain spine product and reusable class 1 devices. It's included 22 rules, and it's grouped in 4 classified groups: non-invasive devices, invasive devices, active medical devices, and special rules that we have. So rule 1 to rule 4 is relevant to non-invasive devices. Rule 5 to Rule 8 is relevant to invasive devices. Rule 9 to Rule 13 relevant to active medical devices. And from Rule 14 to Rule 22 is a special rules. Manufacturers of medical devices should carefully examine the MDR classification rules in Annex 8 to determine whether new conformity assessment rules are now applicable to their products or not. If so, they should engage their notification body where necessary and take steps to evaluate the necessary timescales involved in implementing this change. In some cases where reclassification has occurred, this may be the first time that such relationships and agreements with notification body have been required. Next annexes are Annex 9, 10, and 11, which is about conformity assessment and routes that manufacturer can use for conformity assessment. Annex 9 is about conformity assessment based on a quality management system and on assessment of technical documentation. It means manufacturer must provide a technical file, technical documentation, and implement a quality management system based on ISO 13485 edition 2016. And after that, they can apply for CE marking. So both of them is required. Annex 10 is about conformity assessment based on type examination. It's not included quality management system. It's about only for type examination. And Annex 11 is conformity assessment based on product conformity verification. It's also about verification for product conformity. Annex 12 is certificates issued by a notified body. Actually, there are some requirements and some obligation for certificates will be issued by notified bodies. Certificates shall be drawn up in one of the official language of the Union. Each certificate shall refer to only one conformity assessment procedure. Certificates shall only be issued to one manufacturer. The name and address of the manufacturer included in the certificate shall be the same as that registered in the electronic system. And contents of the certificates must be including expiry date, date of issue, signature, something that is required for notification body to follow these requirements. Annex 13 is about procedure for custom-made devices. In this annex, for custom-made devices, the manufacturer or its authorized representative shall draw up a statement containing all of the following information: the name and address of the manufacturer and of all manufacturing sites. If applicable, the name and address of the authorized representative. Data allowing identification of the device in question. A statement that the device is intended for exclusive use by a particular patient or user, identified by name and acronym or a numeric code. The name of the person who made out the prescription and who is authorized by national law by virtue of their professional qualifications to do so. And where applicable, the name of health institution concerned. The specific characteristics of the product as indicated by the prescriptions, and some of other requirements that must be planned by manufacturer of custom-made devices. Annex 14 is about clinical evaluation. The MDR is more specific about the need for clinical evidence and clinical evaluation, proportionate with the risk associated with the given device. So, reliance on the specific literature to demonstrate equivalence will be more tightly regulated, and clinical evaluations will be more closely aligned with clinical investigation and clinical trials associated with medical products. For clinical evaluation, manufacturer may request clinical strategy review from EC expert panel, clinical data only from published peer-reviewed data. Class 3 normally require clinical investigation. Clinical investigation is a part of clinical evaluation for those medical devices which need to be investigated. Post-marketing clinical follow-up required for Class 3 and implantable consistent EU processes. EUDA MED, European Data Bank on Medical Device, clinical investigation documentation detailed precisely, clinical evaluation, class 3 and implantable devices can rely manufacturers on proven equivalent device or devices where manufacturer has contractual access to all data. Actually, for these items, only for class 3 can be used equivalent. This may require manufacturers to obtain additional clinical data from clinical studies. There will be additional scrutiny of clinical evaluation reports by notified bodies as outlined by new guidance, and clinical evaluation reports that previously were of a suitable level and standard and accepted by notified body may no longer be accepted. So manufacturers should plan to review all their clinical evaluation reports, if not reviewed within the last 1 or 2 years, and ensure that clinical evaluation report include post-marketing surveillance data. So PMS data must be input of clinical evaluation, especially where devices are new to market and where clinical data was limited at the time of first CE marking. Annex 15 is about clinical investigation. In this annex, it's described about ethical principles, because investigation can be done by human persons, so it must be follow some ethical principles. There are also those methods can be used for clinical investigation and can be acceptable by clinical investigation. Documentation regarding the application for clinical investigation must be included: application form, investigator's brochure, and clinical investigation plan. So it must be considered as clinical investigation. For clinical evaluation and clinical investigation also, we have a specific webinar with details and with more specific details about these requirements. Today, we have only overview for these annexes. For our next webinars, our colleague will inform you for a specific requirements on clinical evaluation, clinical investigation, also some requirements for UDI systems and post-marketing surveillance. Annex 16 is list of groups of products without an intended medical purpose. So some medical devices without intended medical purpose can be considered as medical devices by MDR. It's including contact lenses or other items intended to be introduced into or onto the eye. Products intended to be totally or partially introduced into the human body through a specially invasive means for the purpose of modifying the anatomy of fixation of body parts with the exception of tattooing products and piercings. Substances, combinations of substances or items intended to be used for facial or other dermal or mucous membrane filling by subcutaneous, submucous, or intradermal injection or other introduction, excluding those for tattooing. Equipment intended to be used to reduce, remove, or destroy adipose tissue, such as equipment for liposuction, lipolysis, or lipoplasty. High-intensity electromagnetic radiation, for example, infrared, visible light, and ultraviolet. Emitting equipment intended for use on the human body, including coherent and non-coherent sources, monochromatic and broad spectrum, such as lasers and intense pulsed light equipment for skin resurfacing, tattoo or hair removal, or other skin treatment. And equipment intended for brain simulation that apply electrical currents or magnetic or electromagnetic field that penetrate the cranium to modify neuronal activity in the brain. And the last annex is Annex 17, is correlation table which compare requirements and articles of Council Directive 9385 EEC, Council Directive 9342 EEC, and MDR. All these 7 annexes is mandatory for relevant medical devices. So in articles in 123 articles that MDR have, it's referred to these annexes. So it's mandatory to submit the technical documentation. For certification process, once implemented requirements of MDR, the notified body will need to conduct a new certification audit of your company. The certification process is intended with the new application for certification and result in new certificate valid for up to 5 years. Actually, it's regulation for MDR to all certificates after May 2020 must be based on MDR. So based on new agreements and new certificates. The certification activities include assessment of technical file, Class 2A, Class 2B, evaluation of the design for Class 3, evaluation of the quality system for compliance, and finally, an on-site audit where implementation is verified. If the manufacturer has outsourced significant activities or are using crucial suppliers, an audit of these may be needed before the certification process can be finalized and the certificate issued. At the moment, DMVGL NEMCO Pre-Safe under number of 2460 has been applied for MDR to be audited by authority. And our services for medical devices industry is ISO 13485-2016 certification, CE certification based on MDD, and after 2020 for MDR, and our certificates is valid for 5 years for CE marking. Thank you for your attention. I wish you the best, and I hope you participate in our next webinars, where a colleague will inform you about our next webinars, specific requirements for MDR. Thank you. You can send me an email and send us any question that you have. We will reply you as soon as possible. Have a nice time.